Hello and welcome to another video review from AV Forums. I'm Phil Hinton and I've been the editor of AV Forums since 2003. I'm also a fully trained and qualified THX and ISF calibrator with 17 years of experience. In today's video we're looking at the JVC DLA-NX9 native 4K projector. If you like our reviews and want to see more of them while supporting our channel, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell to be informed every time we upload new video content. Also, don't forget to check out the Projector forums at Europe's largest AV community on AV Forums to see what owners of this projector think about it in normal use in their own homes. And while you're there, why not read the full written in-depth review? The JVC NX9 is the flagship 4K D-ILA projector which uses a native 3x 0.69 inch 4K D-ILA chips, and it costs a whopping £18,000. It's also claimed to be the world's first 8K E-Shift projector. This new flagship introduces a brand new projector chassis over the outgoing X Series E-Shift 4K models with a much larger case and huge lens assembly and opening. The NX9 uses an 18 element 16 group all glass lens featuring full aluminium lens barrel and 100mm diameter. Lens shift is plus 100% vertically and plus 43% horizontally, and it offers flexible installation placement. The other major differences that account for the flagship status of the NX9 is the introduction of E-Shift 8K technology and THX certification. The E-Shift uses proprietary high-resolution display technology which shifts by 0.5 pixels vertically and horizontally to achieve up to 4 times the perceived pixel density. E-Shift is also used with multi-pixel control, and this converts HD and 4K material to a perceived 8K equivalent resolution of 8192 by 4320, and this has various processing steps that you can control, such as noise reduction, smoothing and enhancement. The NX9 is not capable of accepting an 8K signal, it only upscales 4K and lower resolutions. The E-Shift of course can be switched off, and the projector can be used at its native 4K resolution of 4096 by 2160. The NX9 also boasts a claimed light output of 2200 lumens and contrast of 100,000 to 1, and with the advanced iris control, JVC claims that goes up to 1 million to 1 as a dynamic contrast figure. The NX9 is also HDR10 ready with the new Frame Adapt HDR technology that can be switched from static to scene by scene or even frame by frame to adjust the dynamic tone mapping. This allows the NX9 to produce the absolute best dynamic range to watch HDR content to its capabilities. There's also support for wide colour gamut with the cinema filter, which helps the projector reach the DCI P3 colour gamut. So with all this technology on board, can the JVC NX9 provide a convincing performance for its premium price tag? The design is that of a traditional projector chassis with air vents to the left and right sides of the front plate and a 7-inch circular recess which houses the 100mm all-glass lens in the centre. The area around the lens is sealed, and at the edges the chassis tapers to join the sides and top, where we have brushed metal black strip with the JVC, HDR, THX and ISF C3 logos at the lens end and the 8K E-Shift and D-ILA logos at the rear. Around the back we have the connections which include a 3D sync input along with two full bandwidth 18GB per second HDMI 2.0B ports with HDCP 2.2 compatibility and 4K 60p 444 support, including HDR10 signals. To control the projector you have an RS232 control port, LAN network connector and a 12V trigger. The USB port is for service and firmware only, and the power socket is at the bottom of the chassis. To the right side of the back plate are a selection of menu controls to access the projector should you misplace the remote control. The remote control supplied with the JVC NX9 is a new design which was launched with the N series of projectors, which is a shorter design than previous units. It has an obvious backlight button to the bottom, and the keys and everything else is laid out in a logical manner around the central directional keys. All the buttons offer direct access to well-used picture settings or functions, and the remote control sits neatly and sturdily in the hand. As we always do with our reviews, we measure the out-of-the-box picture presets to find those that get as close as possible to the industry standards. The idea is a display must get close to these standards in at least one of its picture modes, so end users can see content as it was mastered and intended to be seen. There are a number of SDR picture presets, and we found that Cinema was the most accurate with this review sample. We set the colour gamut to Rec 709, colour temperature to 6500 Kelvin, and gamma to 2.4 for our viewing room, which is a light controlled Batcave. As we can see, the grayscale is not perfect out of the box, with a lack of blue and a little too much green, and some red at varying points that push the delta E errors over the visible threshold of 3, and we can see that within the results on screen with an overly warm yellow look. Video white should be warm, but this is just a little bit too pushed. Gamma tracking was good, but there was a little bit of movement which didn't give us a perfectly flat line. However, none of these issues was visible within content. The accuracy out of the box could be far better given the price point and high level of this projector, but as you would expect, such an item will be professionally calibrated within an installation. Rec 709 colour gamut coverage was also good, but moved slightly out of position by the grayscale being a little bit too yellow. With a corrected grayscale, these points should all drop back to where they should be and provide an accurate Rec 709 colour performance. Of course, with the JVC projector, we have all the controls available to calibrate the image, and the only feature missing is an accurate gamma editor. Everything else is here, including a very good colour management system. We managed to get the grayscale tracking far better than the out-of-the-box results, but again this wasn't quite perfect looking at the graph, even though there's no visible errors or issues thanks to delta E results all under 1.5, which is well below the visible threshold of 3. Gamma remained an issue again without a perfect curve at 2.4, but again this wasn't actually visible or affecting image quality with viewing content on screen. By correcting the grayscale, we also saw the Rec 709 points all fall back into the positions where they should be. 100% red saturation was slightly off and 50% was a tad over, but with delta E errors all now well under the visible threshold, once again these were not visible with any film or TV content. However, while we'd like a little bit more accuracy with gamma tracking, this is a bulb based device and we were happy with the results we managed to obtain. As this is a projector and a reflective display technology, it will not be capable of producing an image that can match a direct view device such as a TV for HDR peak brightness and specular highlights. Indeed, HDR on projectors is a completely different viewing experience to that seen on a TV, but that doesn't mean that we can't take advantage of brighter images and wider colour gamuts. Just don't expect the specular highlights that you see on a 1000 nit TV. We measured a peak brightness of 245 nits on a 10% window at approximately half zoom. This increases to 267 nits with no zoom and decreases to 76 nits on maximum zoom. This is with the projector positioned to 13 feet from our screen surface, which is a screen excellence in lighter 4K. On-off contrast measures in at 41,628 to 1 at the minimum zoom and 126,107 to 1 at full zoom, and the manual iris was open to full for all these measurements. Results will vary from projector to projector as they are bulb based, so factors like screen and room also have an impact. However, this should give you a general idea of the possible performance from the NX9. When it comes to measurements of the PQ EOTF, this is a little bit more difficult as JVC's approach is to use mapping for their frame adapt technology. As such, measured results are not consistent with what we would find on a TV set, and the ST2084 standard is not followed here. There is a more linear result. Coverage of the DCI-P3 wide colour gamut using a filter in the light path is very good, with only a few issues within the saturation tracking chart. Magenta has a hue error which is typical of current devices including TVs, and red is understated at all saturation points. However, these are not visible within content that we viewed, and overall the gamut coverage is impressive for a projector. BT 2020 coverage was 74% XY and 81% UV, with P3 measuring in at 97% XY and 99% UV. If you want the full in-depth performance review where we go into far more detail on actual viewing material, then head over to AV Forums and read the review. Here we'll give you a summarised version. The DLA-NX9 is designed to be used in a pitch black Batcave cinema room like our testing room, and this is where you get the absolute best from its performance. It doesn't have the same incredible deep blacks as the X series models, and the black floor is slightly raised with the new native 4K chips, but it is only slight. There's also new installation modes instead of the previous lens memory functions. The installation modes allow you to fine-tune picture parameters so you can use a scope screen and switch between the aspect ratios. While the black floor is slightly raised compared to the previous JVC X series models, the dynamic range and contrast performance is still very much a JVC strong point, and the NX9 is capable of producing some seriously cinematic images. SDR performance in low lamp mode is superb with excellent Rec. 709 colour accuracy and stunning detail levels. Sharpness really is a massive step up with the NX9, and its new lens and 4K content looks incredible. But even lowly HD from Blu-ray can be incredibly sharp and detailed with superb skin tones and natural looking colours. HDR is still a tough ask for a projector, and an HDR image on a projector is a different proposition to that of a TV display. You just can't get the specular highlights and dynamic range, but that doesn't mean it's not worth pursuing, and thankfully the 3.10 firmware update adds the frame adapt, which really is a game changer for JVC with their HDR. With options for frame by frame, scene by scene and static, the frame adapt technology does exactly what you think it does from those descriptions. Much like how LG, Panasonic and other TV makers have their own dynamic tone mapping systems, frame adapt does exactly the same thing, but for a projector. It doesn't suddenly add in mega bright specular highlight details or boost the image to match a TV, but rather it balances out the dynamics for a scene so that instead of hard clipping details in the whites, for example, it now maps so that those details are now visible without dimming down the rest of the image. The end result really is the best presentation I've seen of HDR10 on a projector so far. Even the presentation of colours is improved as the image is more balanced and nuanced. Skin tones are superb, and the JVC doesn't lose its cinematic edge either. Bright primary colours are represented properly, blacks are deep, and shadow detail is stunning. It's often an overlooked area of HDR, but the above black areas of the image really do add depth and scale. I have to admit that I really took advantage of having the NX9 in for review to watch and rewatch my favourite movies and new 4K UHD discs. Plus, the motion is also strong with 24 frames per second material on the JVC with little in the way of noticeable judder or blur. And all of the above assessment is without engaging the eShift 8K capabilities of this projector. So, is eShift 8K any good? Well, that is actually quite hard to answer, as from my seating position and using well-known test scenes, I was really struggling to see any major difference in resolution. I could certainly hear the eShift device when it was switched on, but when it comes to actually state for sure that I could notice an obvious difference, I have to put my hands up and say, no, not really. Unlike the move to 4K with eShift that also introduced HDR and wide colour gamut to the mix, adding 8K eShift is much harder to notice when being objective and honest with our assessment. For the majority of my time spent with the NX9, and that's 3 months and 60 hours so far, I've used the native 4K of the projector and left the eShift switched off. I'm really struggling to come up with any major weak points other than a few little niggles here and there that don't really add up to anything that would put me off owning such a projector. The main stumbling block is the fact that I'm skint, and this projector costs the same amount as an entry-level Fiesta ST. Okay, so before we go any further, we need to deal with Mr. Elephant in the room. Yes, this does cost £18,000 and is beyond the reach of most of us that are watching the video. It is a projector aimed at the custom installation market, or for those enthusiasts with really deep pockets. So is it worth the cost against the DLA-N7? Well, that's a question that only you will be able to answer, as the NX9 does offer a larger lens setup and the eShift 8K technology, along with THX certification. But we didn't have a chance to put it side by side with the N7, but we would expect there to be some slight improvements with the lens and image tuning that would perhaps stand out. But the price difference is really quite large, and we would encourage you to get a demo of both of these projectors with a specialist dealer if you are considering spending this much on a projector. As a projector, the NX9 is stunning with SDR and HDR content, as you would imagine. The frame adapt system really added a game-changing edge when it comes to HDR tone mapping for a projector, and that is available throughout the N series range. The lens is high quality glass, and that is obvious straight away from lifting the projector out of the box and when in use. Images are sharp and detailed with excellent screen uniformity when it comes to focus, with no obvious signs of chromatic aberration. Colour performance is also excellent, with almost a full DCI-P3 coverage and good volume thanks to the dynamic tone mapping. Blacks are also very good, and just above black detail retrieval is a real strong point with HDR content. And while there is a slight rise in the black floor by swapping to the 4K native chips, contrast and dynamic range remain class leading, and it retains that JVC cinematic look that many of us have enjoyed for a number of years now. It is expensive, but in its market segment, the JVC NX9 adds a new approach to HDR, which actually really works to raise the picture quality of a projector with the format. With all the other added features, build quality, new lens setup, we really feel the NX9 really is the best in its class at this market point for those with very deep pockets.